What's going on YouTube? So today I'm going to try and show you guys how to craft these pretty nice rarity rings that have at least 2 flats, rarity is a suffix, and then some resistances, like that kind of thing. I did self-craft this ring. It was quite easy to do. Didn't really cost that much money, like maybe like 4 or 5 div. And as you can see, we have tier 1 lightning, tier 3 fire, tier 2 life, res, rarity, dex. This is literally every single stat that I want. I actually wanted the dex. My build is very attribute heavy. I wanted the resistance. My build has a lot of suffix pressure because I'm running 2 uniques. You know, the rarity is very, very nice, and I'm fully life, so I need the life as well, but that could easily have been rarity as well, or another flat attack. So the first things first, unfortunately, just because it's like there's no more homogs in this game anymore, there is a lot less deterministic crafting, so you really have to start on a good magic base. And the magic base that you're going to want to start on is going to look like this. These are kind of hard to grab, actually. That's kind of why I would just say, like, as you craft these things, you're going to want to like use these as levers, right? You don't need to have tier 1, but having tier 1 is incredibly nice. You can definitely just go tier 1, tier 2. Tier 2 might be a little bit too low. Like this ring might be too low, but this ring I think is acceptable. You know, you get tier 1, tier 2. Maybe we'll buy a couple of these. No more deterministic crafting anymore, so it's going to take a couple attempts probably in order to get this right. And then all we're going to do with these is we are going to add on opulence. And opulence just gives you rarity, but the thing is that after the rarity nerfs, these now give you tier 1 rarity. So this is pretty much how you're going to start almost any ring or amulet craft, assuming that you want rarity, and you probably do want rarity just because amulets and rings are where you can get your most of your rarity. So we throw on the opulences on these rings. It's guaranteed tier 1 rarity. That is fucking phenomenal. We are off to an exceptionally good start here. At this point, like, it's all deterministic, right? We have essentially triple tier 1s, or like, you know, 2 tier 1s and 1 tier 2. And it only costs us half a div to do this, right? It's really, really cheap. Unfortunately, the next parts are not cheap and also not deterministic. So this is the end of the determinism and cheap part of the craft. But, you know, you gotta spend money to make money. Now, what we want to do, we want to fill out our suffixes. So we want to have our suffixes finished. There's actually only like 2 good things, really: resistances and attributes. And fortunately for us, they are 2 things that we can add on to the ring, not deterministically, but, you know, with a pretty high level of success. All we're going to do now is we are going to add on the catalyst of the corresponding stats that we want. So in this case, we want resistances. I think resistances, if you're trying to profit craft, is probably a little bit better because people want resistances always. However, if you need attributes for your own build, go ahead and just throw on some attribute catalysts. Cool. Let's do fire resistance here. So now we have 2 options. If you look at fire resistance, we can either go with the greater exalt, which guarantees us tier 5 or above, or we can go with the perfect exalt, which if we hit fire res will guarantee us tier 3 or above. If you were trying to cut down costs a little bit, you can just skip the perfect exalt and go for a greater exalt. I think that's totally valid, especially since it's not guaranteed anymore. But given that perfect exalts are incredibly cheap still, so like I would just say, like, fuck it, go for the perfect exalt here. 2/3 of a div, so like I think it's very, very high value in order to perfect exalt. But if the exalt prices change later, you can adjust your strategy based off of that. All we're going to do now is Omen of Dextral Exaltation and then Omen of Catalyzing Exaltation. So these 2 together just make it so this targets the suffix, and then this uses our catalyzing to give us those like 5x odds on hitting the whatever catalyst mod that we have. So this just makes it so our fire modifiers, fire resistance, all elemental resistance, those modifiers have 5x odds of being hit. Now all we need to do is slam. So this is a great example of like this, it doesn't always happen, right? We had like a 50-50 chance of getting one of those resistances. We didn't hit, but the good news is that even though we don't hit, we still have odds of hitting other good stuff. Just like a better exalt orb for us now. So we have a more likelihood of hitting, but we're not going to hit all the time. But this is still very, very phenomenal. We somehow managed to luck our dog tier 1 all attributes. We have another ring, and actually kind of an interesting situation here. Fire res and lightning res, they both have this breakpoint with perfect exalts. You can skip tier 4. However, with cold res, it does not have that breakpoint. Perfect exalts can still hit tier 4. So it's incredibly low value to use cold catalysts and then perfect exalt. We have no qualms against using some lightning catalysts if they're only going to be like a couple exalts, like 1 exalt more on average. That's not a big deal at all. So back to the initial plan: Dextral Exaltation, Catalyzing Exalt, Perfect Exalt Orb, and we hit Strength. A little unlucky again. Okay, so load up some more Eshe's Catalyst here. And just do the same shit on this one. Hopefully we can hit 1 resistance here. Okay, awesome. We hit lightning res tier 2. Honestly, all 3 of these rings are examples of like good enough ring. Having double tier 2 res here is phenomenal. But at the same time, right, even if we miss, having tier 2 strength here is also acceptable. Having tier 1 all attributes here is also actually not just acceptable, but phenomenal. There's a chance to miss, but even when you miss, there's a chance where you can kind of get lucky and still hit. Now there's only one thing left to do, and that is kind of do the same thing and add on another flat attack. One cool thing about attacks on rings is if you look here, tier 1 lightning damage, 200 weighting. Tier 1 cold damage, 200 weighting. Tier 1 fire damage, 200 weighting. However, with physical attacks, tier 1 Phys is 400 weighting. And in general, most of these weightings here are double. So you are way more likely to hit physical than you are to hit any of these other like elemental flat attacks. So the cool part here is if you add a physical modifier, first of all, the only tag that you're actually going to add on here is Phys, okay? Second of all, the physical modifier is way higher likelihood to hit. Another thing to consider is that the Phys catalysts are incredibly cheap. They are 1.1x each, and the Reaver catalysts are incredibly expensive. They're 12x each. So in order to do 1 catalyzing exalt on a Reaver, it's going to cost you like 2 div. But in order to do 1 catalyzing on the Phys, it's going to cost you like 20 something X. So I think for that reason, I would recommend that you just go ahead and throw on the Phys catalyst here. But anyways, that's kind of why I recommend that you guys, when you buy the bases, you don't really want the Phys bases. Like you can pretty much exclude that from your search. Getting the elemental damage bases then sets you up later to hit the Phys a lot easier. So from here, the plan is the exact same as the last step, except this time we don't need to use the Dextral Exaltation because we have prefixes. We don't need to use any sort of other omen because our suffixes are filled and we're guaranteed a prefix. All we need to do now is use our perfect exalts on these 3 rings because we already physical catalyst all 3 of them, and then pray we hit a good physical roll. We hit tier 3 Phys here. We hit tier 1 max life. And then we hit increased fire damage. We hit something good 2 out of 3 of the times. So this is very, very solid situation that we have here. One thing to consider, and I'm glad that we missed on 1, is that the ring is like not necessarily bricked here. Number 1, having fire attack as a roll is like actually not bad. I mean, if we look at the stats here, how bad is this? Having good res. So look, we bought the base for 60x, right? And then we could probably sell this for like close to a divine, even considering that we missed. If you look and you check and you see that this shit 20x, then what you can do is you can grab a Sinistral Crystallization, and then you can grab a Essence of the Abyss. The Essence of Abyss removes a random mod and then converts into a Mark of the Abyss, which you can then convert into a Desecration. What this crystallization, Sinistral Crystallization does is it makes sure that that one mod that you remove has to be a prefix. So what we can do is we can go for a 50-50 to turn this fire damage into a desecrated mod. Now again, this only makes sense to do if the item is bricked. Like in this case, the item is not bricked. Like we can definitely still turn this into a salvageable item, but I want to present this option to you and I want to show you guys what that actually looks like. So crystallization, Essence of the Abyss. We turned our tier 1 fire into Mark of the Abyssal Lord, which we can then guarantee turn into a desecration by using a collarbone on this. Unfortunately, we lost the 50-50, but that's what it would look like. And at this point, we would have tier 1 fire as well as this Mark of the Abyss, and then we could just resend it on the Phys catalysts on this ring and essentially get a second try for our ring. However, we failed, so that happens, but I want to present this option for you to do. Anyways, that's what you do for the misses. Now on to the hits. What we're going to want to look to do here is this. Add collarbones to this. So one thing to consider is using a preserved collarbone versus using an ancient collarbone. The way I generally think of this is that ancient collarbones provide 2x the value of a preserved collarbone. Is a preserved collarbone plus an echo plus an omen of light. If the cost of these 3 mats together is less than the cost of this mat plus the echo, then this is more cost efficient to do. At this current point, they're roughly the same. Then I would just say go for the ancient collarbone because this is a little bit more than 2x. So what are we looking for here? And this is incredibly important to know because you need to know what your premium stats are and you also need to know what your settle stats are. In terms of desecrated mods, none of these are great. So life is decent. You are not unhappy if you see like a high life roll. All of these flats are amazing. This is like exactly what you want to see. You want high flat damage on the rings. And then the second thing you want to see is Rarity. This is also fucking perfect, specifically because we already have Rarity as a suffix and we have Rarity as an implicit. So if you hit tier 1 Rarity, even if you hit tier 2 Rarity, you could easily get like a 45 Rarity ring, which is amazing. And if you have tier 1 Rarity, you can actually get a 50 Rarity ring, which is just disturbing. So those are what we want to hit. And then these percentage damages are like bad, but they give you value at the very least. What we don't want to see is like mana, evasion rating, accuracy rating, chaos damage. That kind of stuff almost gives us no value and is kind of a brick. We'll start off with this more shitter ring here. And exactly what I said, these stats all fucking suck. And unfortunately, we didn't hit high roll lightning damage, but lightning damage itself is still going to add a little bit of value, even though it's such a low roll. So here we have tier 1, tier 1 cold, tier 8 lightning, tier 1 life. This one honestly might be worth an echo. I'm not entirely sure, but that is kind of what we had for this ring. And then here on the other ring, we hit chaos damage, evasion rating. These are all kind of bad stats. And then boom, we hit cold damage or life. So cold damage here is what? Tier 3. And this is tier 1 life, I believe. Yeah, tier 1 life. So we have two very, very good options here. Cold damage is more of a premium to life, even though this is tier 1 roll. Cold damage is just gonna like sell way more because people really want triple flat rings. So let's just go ahead and take that. And this is looking very, very, very nice for us now. So we have triple flat with Rarity. I mean, this ring is probably going to sell for like, I would be surprised if this is worth less than 20 div. That is the idea behind what you're going to want to do. This is how you kind of get these really insanely good end result rings. And I think this is the most efficient way to get there, honestly. If you know of a better way, let me know in the comments. But for a ring like this, we only really invested like 4 or 5 div because a lot of these other rings would pay for themselves. Like this one, we probably invested what, like 2 div into, 3 div, and we could probably sell it back for like 2 div or maybe even 3. I'm not sure. This one, we bricked, but at the time, remember, we were able to sell this as the base for like 1 div. We didn't even have the Desecration on there yet. So my point is that it's going to take you a few tries, but a lot of times the failed attempts will pay for themselves or be able to recoup some of the losses. And then the times where you do hit will just obviously pay for everything else and give you a fuck ton of profit. And also, if you're just self-crafting, like that's just kind of how you get this ring for cheap. That's all there really is to the video. I hope this was really helpful for you guys. If it was, please like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I hope to see you guys again in the next one.